We begin with Nigeria. As the US mulls expanding its travel ban to 36 more countries, Nigeria has issued a stark warning. The nation says the US could face retaliatory action and risk losing access to strategic minerals in West Africa. Now, the warning comes amid reports that the Trump administration is planning to significantly expand its controversial travel ban. Earlier this month, President Donald Trump imposed full...
You probably haven't heard about it yet, but a new trade war has already begun. Not over oil, not over gas, but over minerals, the hidden metals that power your phone, your laptop, your electric car, and the entire clean energy future. Cobalt, lithium, graphite, nickel. They sound ordinary, but together, they're the new oil of the 21st century. And the largest untapped reserves sit beneath African soil. For decades, these resources quietly left the continent on tankers bound for distant factories. Now everything's changing. The world's biggest economies want back in each racing to secure the materials that will decide who dominates the next industrial era. But here's the twist. The old superpower, long used to setting the rules of global trade, is suddenly finding itself locked out. The demand for these minerals is exploding, expected to jump 500% by 2040 as electric vehicles, batteries, and renewable grids go mainstream. Every EV battery needs roughly 60 kilograms of lithium, 30 of cobalt, and a handful of nickel, manganese, and rare earths. That's millions of tons of metals every year, metals that determine which nations build the future and which ones buy it. So it's no surprise that the global spotlight has shifted south. Mining deals worth billions are being signed. New rail lines and refineries are rising from deserts and rainforests. But this time there's a plot twist. The producers aren't waiting for instructions. They're writing the contracts themselves. They're deciding who gets access, what currencies are used, and how profits are shared. And that's where the friction begins. One side wants open markets, predictable pricing, and quick returns. The other wants value jobs, processing plants, and ownership. It's not just business. It's identity. After centuries of exporting raw materials and importing finished goods, nations across the continent are demanding something new: industrial sovereignty. They don't want to just sell rocks. They want to build the batteries, the chips, the factories. The result? A silent tug-of-war between continents. Every trade mission, every diplomatic visit, every mining contract is part of a much bigger game, one that could redefine the world's supply chains for decades. Because if one bloc locks in Africa's mineral wealth, it gains a strategic advantage worth trillions. If another loses access, its green tech revolution could stall. In the 20th century, oil dictated global power. In the 21st, it's going to be minerals. And just like the oil era, control isn't really about extraction, it's about influence. Who sets the prices? Who finances the refineries? Who controls the data flowing through new energy networks? Those questions are now reshaping international diplomacy quietly but decisively. Today, most of the world's rare minerals leave Africa in raw form, then get processed overseas before returning as finished goods. That loop captures 90% of the profit elsewhere. But new policies are breaking that pattern. Governments are demanding on-site processing, local partnerships, and technology transfer. Some are even creating digital marketplaces to track every shipment, every gram of ore in real time. It's transparency and leverage rolled into one. Not everyone's happy. Foreign investors call the new rules resource nationalism. Activists call them justice. Either way, the balance of power is shifting. Trade that once moved in one direction is starting to reverse. And for policymakers thousands of miles away, that's setting off alarms. Officially, the narrative is about sustainability, governance, and fair competition. Unofficially, it's about something simpler: control. Control of the metals that build microchips and missiles, wind turbines and smartphones, control of the next generation of wealth. Because the world's transition to clean energy isn't just environmental, it's geopolitical. And whoever dominates the mineral supply chain will dominate the century. Welcome to the new trade war. It's quieter than the last one, but far more consequential. Instead of tariffs and tanks, it's fought through investments, sanctions, and strategic partnerships: ports, railways, processing hubs. Each new project is a chess move, each ton of lithium, a potential checkmate. For years, the world underestimated how quickly this shift would happen. Now everyone's racing to catch up. Billions in green tech funding are being redirected, while supply chains are being rewritten at lightning speed. But here's the kicker. No matter who wins the contracts, the biggest transformation may be happening on the ground. Local economies are evolving. New universities are training geologists, engineers, and data analysts. And for the first time, resource-rich regions are demanding a seat at the table not as suppliers, but as shareholders in the global future. This isn't just a story about minerals, it's about agency. A generation that refuses to repeat the past. The trade war isn't a headline, it's a sign of something deeper, a rebalancing of power that could define the next 100 years. The question isn't who's mining Africa's minerals anymore. It's who controls what comes next, because the future of technology, clean energy, and global influence all begins where the world once stopped looking. To understand how this new trade war began, you have to look beneath the surface literally. Across the democratic belt stretching from southern Congo to northern Zambia lies the richest vein of cobalt on Earth. In Zimbabwe, lithium deposits rival those of Australia. In Namibia, rare earth minerals, the magnetic metals that power everything. From wind turbines to fighter jets, are being unearthed faster than ever before. All of them have one thing in common: they're the backbone of modern technology, and they've become the new currency of power. For decades, these minerals left the continent quietly sold raw, cheap, and unprocessed. They fueled industrial revolutions elsewhere, while the countries producing them remained stuck exporting dirt. But the script is flipping. Governments are waking up to a simple equation. If minerals are the future, then ownership equals leverage. The numbers are staggering. Over 70% of global cobalt comes from one African nation. Another holds 10% of the world's lithium reserves. And when it comes to manganese and graphite, both crucial for electric vehicles, Africa's share is only growing. So it's no surprise that global powers are scrambling to secure supply. The competition isn't theoretical, it's already reshaping trade routes, financing, and diplomacy. In the past 5 years alone, billions have flowed into new mines, roads, and processing hubs across the continent. But who builds them and who profits has become a point of friction. On one side, Western economies are pushing for open markets and transparent contracts. On the other, emerging economies are offering something simpler: speed, fewer questions, faster results, immediate infrastructure in exchange for long-term access to minerals. For many African leaders, that's a trade worth making. After decades of waiting for development aid that never delivered, they're turning to new partners who bring bulldozers instead of lectures. But this shift comes at a price. And that's where the new trade war begins. Over the last 3 years, a wave of new mining laws has swept across the continent. They share a common theme: local control. Foreign companies can no longer simply extract and export. They must partner with national corporations, process part of the output locally, and reinvest profits. Inside the country, to Western investors, it looks like resource nationalism. To local policymakers, it's self-preservation. Let's break down the economics. For every ton of raw lithium sold and processed, a country might turn around $5,000. But if that same lithium is refined into battery-grade material, its value skyrockets up to $50,000 per ton. Multiply that by millions of tons. And you see why countries are drawing a line. They don't want to export potential wealth. They want to manufacture it. So where does the United States fit into this picture? Surprisingly, it's struggling to keep up. While it once dominated oil markets, it now finds itself playing catch-up in the mineral age. A decade of outsourcing heavy industry has left it dependent on imports for nearly every rare metal that powers its technology sector, and much of that supply runs through Africa. Here's the catch. Even when minerals come from Africa, they're rarely processed there. Instead, they're shipped overseas for refining before making their way back into Western products. That loop gives certain nations, particularly those investing early in Africa's infrastructure, a quiet but enormous strategic advantage: control the processing. And you control the supply. So now, Washington is trying to change the game. Trade envoys are landing in capitals across the continent, offering deals built on transparency, technology transfer, and mutual benefit. Billions in funding have been pledged for green mineral partnerships. But there's a problem: the trust deficit. Many remember when similar promises were made about oil, gold, and diamonds, and how those stories ended. Public sentiment has shifted. In many places, the old relationship feels too one-sided. Local communities want ownership, not just royalties. This isn't just an economic shift, it's a psychological one. The idea that Africa's role is to supply, while others build and profit, is being openly rejected, and that rejection is creating tension. Trade restrictions, tariff threats, and policy disputes are now stacking up. Underneath the polite language of diplomacy lies a brewing storm. Both sides need each other, but neither wants to depend on the other. It's a perfect recipe for a modern trade war, one fought with contracts, currencies, and supply chains instead of tanks. The stakes are enormous. If the continent succeeds in keeping more value in its borders, it could transform its economy, creating new industries, new jobs, and new leverage in global trade. If it fails, history could repeat itself, another boom and bust cycle, another wave of dependency, and every major power knows it. Behind the scenes, data analysts, diplomats, and energy executives are already calling this the Great Resource Reset. It's not just about minerals, it's about rewriting the terms of globalization, because whoever secures the flow of these metals will effectively control the world's energy transition, and whoever doesn't will be left buying batteries from their rivals. Remember, every piece of modern tech depends on these materials, from the smartphone in your pocket to the satellites orbiting above. It all starts underground. That makes the battle for these resources more than an economic story. It's a story about who leads the next era of innovation. And right now, that future is being negotiated in boardrooms, refineries, and mining towns thousands of miles away. In a sense, this isn't just a trade war between nations, it's a race between systems. Efficiency versus equity, speed versus sovereignty, profit versus power. And as the world transitions to green energy, that tension will only grow, because while the planet might be moving toward cleaner technologies, the geopolitics behind them are anything but clean. This is the hidden front line of the 21st century's resource wars. It doesn't look like invasion, it looks like investment. It doesn't sound like gunfire, it sounds like negotiation. But the outcome could shape who controls the future and who's left supplying it. The question isn't just who owns the minerals beneath the soil. It's who gets to define what they're worth. The fight over rare minerals isn't about the past, it's about the future. Who builds it, who powers it, and who profits from it. For centuries, control of energy has shaped global empires. Coal fueled the first industrial age, oil defined the 20th century. Now, minerals, small, silent, and invisible in daily life, are defining the 21st. The next revolution isn't being fought on the battlefield, it's being coded in silicon and forged in lithium, and the raw materials of that revolution lie beneath African soil. That's what makes this new trade war so different. It's not about domination, it's about dependence. The world needs these minerals, and Africa knows it. Across the continent, governments are no longer satisfied being suppliers of raw resources. They're rewriting the rules of trade, demanding technology transfer, ownership, and processing capacity on their own land. This is more than a political move, it's a strategic awakening. For the first time in modern history, African economies are positioned not at the bottom of the global supply chain, but at the center of it. But here's the twist: the balance of power is more fragile than it seems. Building an industrial ecosystem takes more than minerals, it takes capital, skills, and stability. New policies bring new pressures. Environmental standards, local protests, shifting alliances all can reshape the map overnight, and while one power retreats, others advance. The competition isn't only between Africa and America, it's between every nation racing to own the future. The trade war is just the surface layer. Underneath, there's a deeper question. Can the world transition to clean energy without repeating the old patterns of extraction and exploitation? Because history has a habit of looping back, the same minerals that promise independence could also create new dependencies on new partners, new financiers, and new technologies. If Africa becomes the supplier of the future, will it finally hold the power it deserves? Or will it find itself in another cycle, different players, same game? That's the paradox of the mineral age. Every nation wants to go green, but the road to sustainability is paved with the metals of geopolitics: cobalt for batteries, lithium for cars, nickel, manganese, graphite, each one a building block of the new world economy. The planet's race to net zero isn't just an environmental story. It's a power struggle disguised as progress. And here, in the middle of it all, stands a continent rewriting its destiny. For decades, others dictated the price of its resources. Now, it's learning to dictate the terms. That's not revenge. That's evolution, a slow, calculated shift from extraction to empowerment, from being the world's resource base to becoming its innovation base. Trade wars don't always end with winners and losers. Sometimes they end with new rules, and that's exactly what's happening. As global powers compete for access to Africa's minerals, the continent is quietly building leverage it's never had before, leverage that could redefine how the world's energy future is financed, traded, and controlled. The story of rare minerals isn't just about supply chains, it's about sovereignty. It's about who controls the blueprint of the modern world. And in that story, Africa is no longer a background player, it's a protagonist. The decisions made today in boardrooms, in parliaments, in mining towns will shape everything from electric cars to artificial intelligence. Because every chip, every motor, every battery begins in the ground, Look closely and you'll see the pattern. Every generation redefines power in its own way. The last century's map was drawn in oil. This century's will be drawn in minerals, and the lines are being redrawn right now. The trade war isn't just a clash between nations. It's a test of who learns from history and who repeats it. For some, it's an opportunity to invest smarter, fairer, and faster. For others, it's a warning that control of resources means nothing without control of destiny. But one truth stands out above the rest. The ground beneath our feet, once ignored, is now the most valuable battlefield on Earth, and in that fight for the future, Africa isn't just participating, it's leading. Because in the age of rare minerals, power doesn't belong to those who consume the most, but to those who own what the world can't live without.